Hello, and welcome to LSET Tech Byte. Today we are creating a simple math game using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In this video, we'll guide you through the process, step by step, enabling you to build your own interactive math game. Let's dive into the HTML code. In the head section, we have the meta viewport tag to ensure proper scaling on different devices. The title of our web page is set as Math Game. Moving on to the body of our HTML document, we have two main sections contained within div elements: the game container and the controls container. Within the game container, we have a heading prompting players to fill in the blank with the correct number or operator. Beneath the heading, we have a div with the ID question, which will display the math question dynamically generated by our JavaScript code. Next, we have a submit button with the ID submit button for players to submit their answers. Lastly, there's a paragraph element with the ID error message reserved for displaying error messages. In the controls container, we have a paragraph element with the ID result where the game result will be displayed. Below that, we have a start button with the ID start button, and we've also linked an external style sheet named style.css to handle the visual presentation of our game. To bring our math game to life, we've included an external JavaScript file named script.js at the end of the body tag. Now let's dive into the CSS code that styles our math game. We'll go through each section to understand how the game's appearance is being defined. Starting with the universal selector, we're resetting default padding and margin to 0 and setting the box sizing property to border box to include padding and borders in the element's total width. Additionally, we're specifying the font family to be Arial, Helvetica, or Sans Serif as a fallback. The body selector sets the background color of our web page to a vibrant green shade to create a visually appealing backdrop for our game. Moving on to the container class, this styles the main container for our game. It has a light peach background color, a width of 90% of the viewport width with a maximum width of 31.25 em, ensuring it remains responsive. The container is positioned absolutely in the center of the viewport using transform and top left properties. It has padding, rounded corners, and contains the main content of our game. Within the container, the H3 selector styles the heading fill in the blank with correct number or operator. It has a slightly larger font size, bold weight, and is centered with a dark blue color for contrast. The submit button selector styles the submit button. It has a moderate font size, bold weight, rounded corners, and a vibrant green background color to match the theme of our game. It's centered horizontally within the container and has white text color for contrast. The error MSG selector styles the paragraph element reserved for displaying error messages. It has a centered text alignment, a light pink background color, red text color for emphasis, padding, and rounded corners for a visually appealing display of error messages. The question selector styles the div element where the math question will be displayed. It has a light orange background color, large font size, bold weight, and is centered both horizontally and vertically within the container for prominence. The input selector styles the input fields where players will input their answers. It has a moderate font size, bold weight, and is centered horizontally. The input fields have a transparent background, a bottom border for a subtle separator effect, and become highlighted when focused. Moving to the controls container selector, this styles the container for game controls. It spans the entire viewport height and width and is positioned absolutely. The background color is a vibrant green to match the theme. The Start button selector styles the Start button for initiating the game. It has a moderate font size, bold weight, rounded corners, and a white background with dark text for contrast. When hovered over, it may change its appearance to indicate interactivity. Lastly, the Results selector styles the paragraph element where the game result will be displayed. It has a moderate font size, bold weight for emphasis, and dark text color. Inside the paragraph, certain spans may have increased font weight for emphasis. The Hide class is used to hide elements by setting their display property to none. This can be useful for hiding elements until they are needed in the game interface. Let's move on to the JavaScript part to give functionality to our math game. In this section, we'll go through each line of JavaScript code and explain how it adds interactivity to our math game. We start by declaring an array named operators containing the basic arithmetic operators addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Next, we have variable declarations for various elements of our game: start button, question, controls, result, submit button, and error message. These variables are used to access corresponding elements in the HTML document. The random value function generates a random integer within a specified range. It takes two parameters, minimum and maximum, and uses math.random to generate a random decimal between 0 and 1, which is then scaled and rounded to produce a random integer between minimum and maximum. The question generator function dynamically generates math questions for the game. It selects two random numbers between 1 and 20 and a random operator from the operators array. Depending on a random variable, it constructs different types of questions: number, number, number operator, operator number, or number operator number. The user's answer is stored in the answer value variable for comparison later. The event listener for the submit button triggers when the user clicks the submit button. It checks the user's input against the correct answer and handles different scenarios: correct answer, incorrect answer, and invalid input. It also handles operator-specific questions by verifying the user's input against the available operators. The event listener for the start button initializes the game when clicked. It resets necessary variables, hides unnecessary elements, clears any error messages, and calls the question generator function to generate the first question. The stop game function handles the end of the game. It displays the result text, changes the start button text to restart, and reveals the controls for restarting the game. And that's the JavaScript code for adding functionality to our math game. With these scripts in place, our game is ready to challenge players with dynamic math questions. Thank you for watching. Make sure to please like and subscribe to get updates.